Nigeria and Spain signed 9 agreements and memoranda of understanding in critical economic sectors.
Bandits abduct scores of passengers along Birene-Gwari Highway in Kaduna.
National Food Security Council to meet on food inflation.
Provide a plan and some methods in which we can reduce the cost of food.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the judiciary in 23 years of Nigeria's unbroken civil rule.
Really, there's no doubt that the Nigerian judiciary, as the third arm of government, has been playing key roles since the return of civilian rule to Nigeria on May 29, 1999.
You're right, Nadabo. In fact, the judiciary is seen as the backbone of democracy, as it intercedes, as it were, for the citizens, as well as in disputes involving the other arms of government. It also, as we all know, adjudicates on matters pertaining to the electoral process, pre-election activities, election activities, and post-election activities, as well as appeals.
Well, Section 6, subsection 6B of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, that is, provides that the judicial powers of the courts shall extend to all matters or disputes between state and federating units, contestation between citizens and government, as well as between persons and persons in Nigeria, and to all actions and proceedings relating thereto, for the determination of any question as to the civil rights and obligations of that person.
Well, that provision depicts the enormous powers and role that the judiciary has in ensuring peace, order, and good governance, which are the major ingredients for democracy to thrive.
And according to International Foundation for Electoral Systems, IFES, and I quote, "A truly sustainable democracy can only thrive on a strong and reliable judicial system." Kingsley.
Well, it is on that note that the judiciary, as we indicated earlier, intervened in several matters. These include, of course, issues around revenue derivation, tenure of local government councils, and then we also saw what happened in a good number of matters, Nadabo, in the course of the last 23 years.
And of course, there's no doubt the judicature has great moments and concerns in the last 3 years, as you said, of the nation's civil rule. And then great moments in the area of improved welfare of the judiciary, modernization of courts and their proceedings, the determination of winners of some elections, like the case of Bayelsa State governorship election, and that of Imo State, and the deletion of 84 political parties, to cite a few examples, Kingsley.
Well, on the flip side, some would argue that the judiciary has also come under serious criticisms on certain occasions, such as the usually conflicting decisions by courts of coordinate jurisdiction. We have also seen instances for that arising from forum shopping and allegations sometimes of corruption relating to some judicial officers who have ultimately been punished by the National Judicial Council. But above all, there have also been instances in the delay of the dispensation of justice.
And 23 years into the nation's democratic journey, how has the judiciary fared in discharging its constitutional mandate? What are the challenges militating against the judiciary in justice delivery? And what can be done to enhance justice delivery in the country, especially now that we are already in the electoral process towards 2023 general elections? Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. My name is Yusuf Nadabo Usman.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Nadabo to also welcome you to the program. We're reaching you live from our headquarters studios in Abuja, the nation's capital. In the course of the program, we have our complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review and business. For now, we have the highlights of the morning news with Najatu Tijani. Good morning, Najatu.
Good morning, Kingsley and Nadabo. Here is the morning news. Nigeria and the Kingdom of Spain have signed 9 agreements and memoranda of understanding on critical economic sectors aimed at deepening and expanding the highly beneficial relations between the two countries. The outcome of President Muhammadu Buhari's state visit to Spain, the first since coming to power.
A great milestone as far as the fight against corruption is concerned, as far as recovery is concerned. It is a first step, and then building on what we have done by way of signing the agreement, we will take a step further by way of tracing the illicit assets, and then by way of having same recovered and repatriated.
Major takeaway, I would say, is we've strengthened the relationship, reinforced the relationship with Spain. So we're looking to see increased investment by Spain in Nigeria. So that's going to be a real plus. Spain is also the largest importer of Nigerian gas, and I think the third largest importer of Nigerian crude.
The federal government has also reaffirmed Nigeria's commitment to delivering a world-class, first-ever global conference on tourism, culture and the creative industry scheduled for November this year. President Muhammadu Buhari gave the assurance while visiting the headquarters of the United Nations World Tourism Organization in Madrid, saying Nigeria has enormous wonders to reveal to the world at the conference.
Other proof of Nigeria's support of the vision of the organization, and also an affirmation of the confidence reposed in our country by your organization. The event provides yet another opportunity for Nigeria to showcase its tourism and creative industry in the world.
Meanwhile, the National Food Security Council is to meet soon to address food inflation. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, made this known while briefing newsmen after the Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja, saying the council will also come up with a plan and method aimed at reducing cost of food, which is increasing the rate of inflation in the country. The meeting, chaired by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, also received the report of the first quarter GDP.
To set up a special effort to look at the sectors that are not growing, and also to look at how we can grow the other sectors better. The Council has also decided that the National Food Security Council will very quickly meet to address the issue of food security, food inflation, and also provide a plan and some methods in which we can reduce the cost of food to support improved food prices for the citizens.
The increasing effects of climate change and energy crisis in Africa demand that the continent discovers new sources of clean energy and technologies which will lead to growth and industrialization. Finding solutions to these problems is the reason Nigeria is hosting the first Nigeria-Africa Natural Resource and Energy Investment Summit in Abuja.
Aligning all our resources so that we can provide power, energy for our people. Of course, and generally to develop Africa. That's why we're here. Exchange ideas, learn from one another, peer review, and all that.
The victory of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar as the presidential standard-bearer of the People's Democratic Party for the 2023 general election is now sealed with the presentation of certificate of return by the party's National Working Committee.
I'm excited and happy for this opportunity to bear our party's flag again. Let us all remember that what just happened is a contest within a family to decide how to put our best foot forward. The main contest is the one to win the presidency of our country for our party.
The All Progressives Grand Alliance APGA has affirmed Professor Peter Nana Chukwudi as the presidential candidate of the party for the 2023 general elections. Professor Meadi emerged unopposed.
I am stepping out with the triple banner of rule of law, separation of powers, and due process.
Terrorists have abducted scores of passengers along Birnangwari Road in Kaduna State. The incident occurred when a motorcade conveying passengers from Birnangwari to Kaduna came under heavy attack. Motorists and passengers who narrowly escaped had to run several kilometers from the scene of the attack, while 8 vehicles were burnt by the terrorists. That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Nadabo and Kingsley after the break.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. One of our segments this morning is business. And then it says Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, SMEDEN, pledges more access to finance for MSMEs. That's Nanjon Alika Opanachagwa for details.
The International Finance Corporation estimates that micro, small and medium enterprises in developing countries like Nigeria have an unmet financing need of $5.2 trillion every year. This is because they are less likely to be able to obtain bank loans. Acting Director General of the Small and Medium Development Agency of Nigeria, Olawole Fasonya, says it is posed to reduce this loans access gap with the introduction of its microfinance bank and continued support for small businesses in the country, especially MSMEs involved in agribusiness.
We officially signed MOU with some banks to do a matching fund program for MSMEs, especially those in the agri sector, where SMEs in the agribusiness can access between 1.2 and 5 million naira to inject into their businesses. This is one of the numerous programs that we hope to roll out. For example, before the end of this year, we plan to also launch a microfinance bank. So in this microfinance bank, the agency has the largest share.
And taking a look at Wednesday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Okbanachi, Arua.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business package and Good Morning Nigeria. Up next, newspaper review.
Well, as usual, Bayo Tebi is in the house. You're welcome, Bayo.
Thank you, Yusuf. Good morning.
Good morning,
Kingsley.
Right,
good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you. We've got 3 papers this morning.
Yeah, we have 3 papers. I have the leadership here and Al Jazeera. I think you have...
I have the Nigerian Tribune.
Okay, let's start with the leadership here and see what's on the front page of the leadership newspaper for today. The leadership newspapers, please. On the front page of the leadership, especially on page 17, they say there is this story on inflation. FG to convene Food Security Council meeting. Details of that on page 17. And on page 28, fake Federal Executive Council, that is OK's NNPC, ECOWAS, Nigeria, Morocco gas pipeline deal. And on another story here is the one on, rather on 2023 election. It says 2023, Obasanjo mobilizes South against Atiku, who wants power shift. Now, APC frontrunners, Tinubu, Oshibanjo, Lawan, Amechi, Bello, and 4 others may be shortlisted. Then you have APC stakeholders kick against consensus option as Buhari tips Oshibanjo as party's flag bearer. The Southeast leaders back Lawan for presidential ticket. These are the riders on that story. Then the other story on page 30 here is FIRS begins recovery of unremitted tax deductions by states and local government areas, or local government councils, if you like. This is about on page 30. And then another 106 stranded Nigerians returned from Libya on page 6 of the leadership newspaper. And finally, still on page 6, native doctor 70 nabbed over beheading of Anambra lawmaker. And I still have the Al Jazeera here, Al Jazeera Nigeria. And let's see what Al Jazeera has on the front page this Thursday, 2nd day of June 2022. Right on that masthead it says, alleged 6.2 billion naira fraud, EFCC closes case against ex-Plateau Governor Jang. Details of that on page 9. And on page 8, which is the big story and the main story here on Al Jazeera Nigeria, unlimited tax deductions, FIRS to block states from loans and others. And the writer is threatens to make deductions from FAC allocation. Details of that on page 8. There are some few stories on the right-hand side of your screen here on the page. You see there's a story on page 23 which says CBN retains 5% interest rate for critical sectors. And on page 22, Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline, fake OKS NNPC ECOWAS deal. On page 16, NFF loses major sponsorship deals. And on page 10, ex-Anambra Chief Judge wins Abuja presidential ticket. And on page 2, we have bills seeking prohibition of ransom payment diversionary, says rape. And then finally, at the bottom of the page, we have two stories. One is on page 10, rather the two of them are on page 10, I would say. A father and mother, 3 children die in Ondo auto crash. And then former SSG of Bauchi, that is, says why I relinquished Bauchi Guba ticket. These details are there on page 10 of Al Jazeera Nigeria. Kingsley?
Thank you very much, Nadavo. Let's also take a look at the window page of the Nigerian Tribune. Some of the headlines are also reflected on that window page of the Nigerian Tribune. Federal government to convene food security meeting. FEC okays 23.5 billion naira for petroleum, power, and police ministry projects. We must unite to end APC's misrule. Atiku rallies PDP, gets certificate of return. Details of that story you'll find on page 22. The lead story has a kicker, president's successor, and it has a double-decker headline, disquiet in APC over Buhari's statement. And then you have, of course, other details that come under it by way of riders. Okada ban enforcement takes off in Lagos. That's on page 28. Commercial motorcyclists disappear from Apapa, Tinkan, Igomo, and Ijora. Port users trek, ride bicycles. Lagos steps up action on alternative transport services. And on remitted tax deductions, FIRS begins enforcement to bar defaulting states from local and external borrowings and bonds issuance. That's on page 6. Bayo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let's start with the ban on commercial motorcycles in Lagos, which is now confirmed that it's taking very, very strong effect. A special police contingent were put on alert to enforce the prohibition across the 6 local government areas. Daily Trust reports its investigation to indicate that many riders have now started relocating to their home states, while others are resorting to selling their motorcycle. However, within the precinct of Lagos, especially across Ogun State, others have relocated to Ogun in the areas of Kara, Ibafo, and Mowe villages. Lagos State government has also emphasized that, quite unlike the ban in 2020, this time around the ban is total and government will not relent. Meanwhile, the Lagos State government says that it will crush all the seized motorcycles found violating the ban in the 6 local government area on Friday. This is sequel to the complaints by residents of Lekki Association that the government was not doing anything about the motorcycles they have seized. On the other hand, the government says alternative to Okada services have been instituted in what is described as first mile, last mile, and other bus schemes. Also to be introduced and energized is taxi ride that is described as lag ride, as well as boat services where ferries are to be increased on the waterways. There is the story that Nadabu read about terrorists that have kidnapped passengers who were traveling along the Kaduna-Birnin-Gwari road. The terrorists took over the highway, intercepted vehicles, and took occupants of the vehicle, mostly women and children, and took them hostage. They are reported to have set about 8 vehicles ablaze. The chairman of Birnin-Gwari Security Vanguard, Ibrahim Nagwari, says that there are indications that the gang are working with the Ansar terrorist group. There is need, he says, for that highway to be closed from traveling for some time until it is properly secured. But in Zamfara state, it's a situation of dogs eating dogs. There has been a face-off between 2 rival bandit groups, and this has led to scores of bandits being killed. One group led by Bello Turji and another group led by a man called Dulu. They went after one another when a relation of Bello Turji was being conveyed to Kano for medical treatment and he was killed. Bello Turji moved his men into the forest where the Dulu men were. It's called Mania Forest. And for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, they went at each other. At the end of it, 18 of Bello Turji's men were killed and 28 of Duru's men, including Duru himself, are said to have been killed. So it's a case of dog beginning to eat dog. I think Nigerians' prayers have been answered now. These bandits are going at each other. Well, there's good news. The Catholic Pontiff, Pope Francis, has approved cardinal designates. 2 of them are from Africa, and one is Bishop Peter Opaleke of the Ekulobia Diocese. He is the 4th cardinal that is Nigerian. Following in tow would Francis Cardinal Arinze, Anthony Cardinal Olubunmi Okogie, and John Cardinal Onaeka. President Muhammad Buhari has expressed joy over the cardinals designate, and he has commended the Catholic Pontiff for finding Nigerian capable to be among the 2 that he selected from Africa. By the way, the cardinals are the conclave that always elect the Pope, and every cardinal is a potential Pope because the Pope are elected from the conclave of cardinals.
Well, I think that it's interesting that the Federal Executive Council is proposing now to convene a Food Security Council meeting. It's never too late. Now, beyond the figures that have been reported by the National Bureau of Statistics, there is no question that one of the major sources of expenditure by various households today is the cost of food items.
Yes.
Cost of food items. And I mean, I shop from time to time, and you just have a feel also of what the price situation is. A mudu of honey beans is nothing less than 900 naira. Some of our urban markets here in Abuja, 900. This is a mudu of beans that sometime last year, even up, okay, let's say up to 2020, was max 350 naira. A tuber of yam, not small, not those even massive tubers of yam that you will get, it's selling for 1,200, sometimes 1,500. And you're asking yourself, 3 fingers of plantain going for 1,000 naira. The same 3 fingers of plantain that they will be pleading with you to come and buy for 200 naira only just about a year or less ago. And we are seeing that. You're seeing, I don't know whether you have also observed, the size and weight of bread is shrinking.
Yes.
Never you are chocolate. I mean, I don't know. The size and weight of bread it's shrinking. Yes. And then you are having to pay more for this.
Yes.
And even the cost of flour has gone up tremendously.
Yes, that's right.
Bread that you used to buy for 100 naira has shrunk in size and in weight, and it has increased to about 200 naira. Not only that, if you go to supermarket, even ordinary confectionaries, you see that the quantity is getting reduced. Though you find that the price is the same, but what you used to have for the quantity has considerably gotten reduced.
That's talking about really the food items, Kingsley, and of course, when you look at even the means of cooking the food items.
Gas prices,
especially the one I have here, it says cost of 12.5 kg LPG hits 9,400, highest in 3 years. Now, when the items get higher in prices, and of course, getting them, processed per se, that's cooked, becomes another problem. While, states are placing ban on charcoal, kerosene's prices, skyrocketing, gas is going up, and I mean, the whole thing is becoming too heavy on the masses.
Oh, that's right. The drain on the household pocket and individual pockets is enormous. There's no question about that. The kerosene prices are also very high.
Yeah.
Depending on where you are buying the product from. Let me try to illustrate just the whole cost of food. As we're talking about these food items, the same way, look at fruits, prices of fruits. Okay, the argument could be made during Ramadan season, there's some profiteering as sellers will increase their price on the basis of increased demand. But Ramadan ended almost 2 months ago. And then you see how many mangoes that you see when they put together some 5 miserable mangoes. And it's just, I'm telling you, 1,000 naira. And you say that's to say 200 naira for one mango. Look, this is the season of walnut, for instance. Walnut. I was shocked the other day. I said, Oga, this one is one for 50 naira. Walnut. There is some neighborhood store where the gentleman usually stocks good quality plantain chips. For some weeks now, he has not had that good quality plantain. So I asked him, I said, look, what happened to your supplier? He said, the man says that the cost of plantain has become excessive. That he's not able to break even. So, okay, let's look at these various items. Do we also import plantain from Ukraine or from Russia?
Sadly, those who produce this item will tell you that the cost of dollar has gone up.
That's the the issue. So,
everybody uses that as an excuse.
As an excuse, but affordability is one of the ingredients in food security. Affordability. If today we are all complaining, middle class, upper middle class, and the lower class, everybody is complaining about the cost of food. It means that your disposable income is diminished.
But the heartwarming information coming from FEC yesterday is that the economy is growing. It has grew by 3.1%. But how do you relate that and then see the possibility of trying to translate that to the table of the masses and the people on the streets?
Good question.
That is what the president always said, that whenever they give him figures, he will tell them that, let's see it on the ground.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because they will give you indices that shows that there is growth. And when they look at growth, there are certain indices they look at. But go to the periodic report for the Nigeria, the
National Bureau of Statistics.
And you begin to see the increase in urban inflation and rural inflation, and that is what takes away the purchasing power of Nigerians. There is this interesting story about corruption. A federal high court in Abuja,
that should be the final report.
Yes, has ordered interim forfeiture of assets of NOC University. The leadership is reporting that the private university was built by a former director of finance in the Federal Ministry of Health, and he now has to show cause why it should not be permanently forfeited. The assets to be forfeited include the physical assets of the university involving Senate building, Faculty of Medicine, and the buildings of the Senate assigned deanery. Also to be forfeited is a temporary status is Gusamen Waterworks, Gusamen Event Center, and Gusamen International Hotel, also all located in Kaduna.
Who was this person?
The person is a former director of finance and supply. His name is given as Anthony Hassan. He served between the year 2016 and 2019. He now has to show cause, otherwise all these assets will be forfeited to the
2016, 2019.
EFCC took the case up to court.
It's all right. Thank you so much, Bayo, for this highlights of the news from the papers.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break now. Stay with us. Now, the judiciary, no doubt, has witnessed expansion in infrastructure and in jurisprudence in the last 23 years of civil rule. And to begin our conversation, let's share the views of a cross-section of Nigerians on the third arm of government and the discharge of its constitutional mandate.
I believe we are still learning, so the judiciary are in a good position to make, at least that the last hope of the common man, but we believe as they do mistake, we correct it. With time we'll get better.
The judiciary, they have a lot of role to play. It seems there are a lot of deficiencies in the judiciary roles.
The judiciary should be loyal, not to be taking bribe.
Like they say, the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. We can only encourage them to do better than they are doing now.
So the law is there. Stakeholders, the institution should implement the law.
All right, those were the views of a cross-section of Nigerians on what they perceive to be the performance of the judiciary in 23 years of democratic rule. We have guests with us here at the studios as well as at one or two of our network centers. Regular guests, Professor Akinseye George, learned senior advocate of Nigeria, Professor of Public Law and President, Center for Social Legal Studies. Prof, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Also here with us in the studios is Yahaya Dangana. He's a legal practitioner. Yahaya, pleasure to have you this morning.
The pleasure is mine. Good morning, our esteemed viewers.
Also joining us in our Just studio is Mark Jacob, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Kaduna State. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
I will be expecting Professor Richard Wokocha, Professor of Constitutional Law and Jurisprudence in the course of this presentation. Whenever he comes, so we'll get him ready and we'll continue. Kinsley?
Thank you very much, Madabo. Let's begin by just taking an overview of the performance of the judiciary in the Fourth Republic, which is 23 years old counting. Professor Akinseye George, how does the scorecard look like?
I think the judiciary has acquitted itself very well. The judiciary is the third arm of government, but the least resourced. You know, they are poorly resourced, the facilities are not there, yet the judges, you know, have continued to make significant contributions, you know, for the stabilization, you know, or for the stability of the country, you know, for consolidating democracy and protecting human rights. Of course, you know, there's a lot of room for improvement, but by and large, you know, looking at the work conditions under which, you know, judges work, I think the judiciary has acquitted itself, you know, as the institution of accountability in a democracy. You know, we have a situation where the political branches, you know, the legislative, you know, as well as the executive, you know, are often very unhappy, you know, to follow the law, you know, but in critical situations, the judiciary has said, no, you can't do that, you know, and I think the judiciary has acquitted itself as the organ of government charged with the responsibility of consolidating democracy, protecting human rights, and giving and promoting respect for the rule of law.
Prof, when you say acquitted, it means given a clean slate and a good bill for the judiciary all through 23 years. We'll get to interrogate that much more in the course of this program. Let's hear from Yahaya Dangana. Really, do you buy in that? Has it really acquitted itself?
For every administration or every arm of government or every enterprise is a work in progress. Considering where the system is borrowed from, the indigenous challenges, and what we are trying to work towards having a perfection in the society. To that extent, I will agree that yes, the judiciary has really tried in the sense that look at the multidimensional aspect in which judgment comes in which enforcement comes in which the fight against corruption and others comes in. And to this extent, we've witnessed a situation whereby judiciary even gave judgment against the government, and these same judgments were implemented. We try to, or are quick in condemning the judiciary, particularly when it comes to corruption cases in Nigeria. The judiciary itself cannot go out to fish for evidence. It is the duty of the investigators and the prosecutors to make their case before the judiciary. That is why it is a panel. Looking at the panel gets enlarged as you go the higher ladder. From the trial court to the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, the number of the panels keep enlarging. And in most cases, you have divergent opinion. They are human beings. They are members of the society. They perceive things the way we perceived. If for any reason I have reason not to agree with the judgment that was delivered, that is my opinion, and that should be my perception to it. Even on the bench, we've seen instances where there are dissenting judgment. The judgment of Supreme Court, in most cases, you will see split judgment, 2 to 3 or 4 to this, but in whatever situation, that is the arm with which they operate within the confines of the law. And to me, that is the procedure, and they've really tried.
All right, thank you, Yahaya. Now, over now to our Just Network Center, where we earlier introduced Mark Jacobs, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Kaduna State. Mark, let's have your take on 23 years of the judiciary in Nigeria's democratic experience.
Well, I am a bit sad that the judiciary in Nigeria has continuously become the whipping child of the other arms of government. It is within this period that we have witnessed the very wrong or very ugly situation where judicial officers at the highest level are visited in the night by armed government agents who break into their homes and take them the way you take common criminals, arrested and publicized as criminals, as fraudulent people, and after some time, when they go through their trial, they are told they were not guilty of anything. But that is after they have been humiliated. So within this period, we have seen the exercise of the humongous powers donated by the Nigerian Constitution to the executive arm, which uses all those powers against the judiciary. You have a Judicial Service Commission that is under the executive arm. You have the agency that is under the executive. And several other, you have the Court of Bureau that operates as a pseudo court. And it's not under the judiciary, it's under the executive. So when the executive chooses, it uses the court of Bureau, the tribunal to deal with judicial officers and other politicians. Now, like I said, Chapter 6 of our Constitution donates terrible powers to the executive, to the disadvantage of all other arms of government, to the extent that the executive can elect to deal with judicial officers the way it wants. And we have seen it practiced within this period of so-called democracy, where the executive arm has been very unfair and very, very harsh on the judiciary. Now, when you weaken and humiliate the judiciary, you're actually taking the foundation, the very big pillar that is supposed to support democracy. You are belittling it. You are making it look very useless in the eye of the public. You are making it to become unreliable, because people now choose to say, I leave you with God, instead of going to court to express frustration or to find justice. People have lost confidence in the judiciary, not really because of corruption as such, no, but because the executive has painted and propelled an opinion that has gone around the common man that the judiciary is corrupt, that the judicial officers at the highest level, the Supreme Court justices, humiliated before the eye of the public. And we expect to have a sound judicial system. It will work. So the fundamentals within this period of democracy have been abused. The judiciary is having a difficult. I listened to my lord, the retired Supreme Court Justice, Justice HMB, during his valedictory session, where he said Supreme Court justices, their salaries were stagnant for 15 years. 15 years. Even the common laborer or cleaner in the normal civil service does not stay on one salary scale for 15 years. So these are things that are happening, and because the judicial officers are not involved in activism, they do not have unions that can fight for their rights, they keep quiet and continue to work. You go to a court on a day and find 32 cases in the list. A judicial officer working without air conditioning in the courtroom, sitting down 6-7 hours, and you expect optimal performance. While the executive, you go to a local government chairman's office, he has air conditioning left, right, and center. He has everything going for him. Talk less of governors. So the executive has actually made it impossible for the judiciary to optimally perform. And like I said, the entire structure of the judiciary makes it impossible for the judicial officers to excel. A Judicial Service Commission that is under the federal executive arm of government performs or does the bidding of the executive. In the same way, the states, the Judicial Service Commission of the states is controlled, they appoint who they want. The executive does the appointment. And in my state, I've seen where a lawyer has been withdrawn, removed from the Judicial Service Commission because he did some cases against government. And so you find a platform or a structure that is structured to fail. And we can only be very cosmetic if we say that the judiciary has performed. The judiciary has been unable to perform optimally.
So, Mark Jacob is former Attorney General and Commissioner of Justice, Kaduna State. He's speaking to us from Jos. We learned that guest from Port Harcourt, Professor Richard Wokocha, Professor of Constitutional Law and Jurisprudence, is here with us. So thank you so much for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Get started or continue with you really before we lose sight of the initial salvos we're supposed to get from our guest this morning. That's talking about the 23 years of judiciary, you know, in Nigeria's unbroken civil rule. What's your take on that? At least you might have followed some of the conversations, I mean the opinions of the guests here. We have 3 of them already have spoken, and then we really want to hear from you. What have you really heard from them, and indeed, what's your take on the 23 years of Nigeria's, you know, unbroken you know, civil rule as far as the judiciary is concerned?
I think we've done fairly great, but there's been a lot of disturbing times and circumstances that led one to develop the impression that we need to do a lot more, a whole lot more. The character of the judiciary is one that makes it the last hope of a citizen, and that means that we must be able to have confidence in our judiciary. We must be able to get away with the impression that, well, if it comes to the worst, if I find my way to the courts, I will get justice. a number of developments, a number of circumstances have given the impression that we might as well begin to forget that impression. And I find that extremely disturbing, because the judiciary is the organ of government that holds the state together, state, citizens, and interpersonal relationships together. So I think we've gotten to a level I find disturbing, and we need to do a lot more, whether it's in terms of investment, whether it's in terms of scrutiny in the appointment of judicial officers. There is a whole lot more required to be done by us from our experience in the last 25 years.
Thank you very much, Professor Wakocha. Well, you're looking at the quarter century. Our focus is on 23 years, but I think that the views that you have expressed now in your opening comments can certainly be accommodated in the last 23 years. We're back to our Abuja headquarters studios. Professor Akinseya George, we will probably live towards the later part of the conversation. Critical, though, the structural issues that Mark Jacobs talked about when he was speaking from our Just Network Center. But let's look at the value chain of justice delivery, so that we'll break it down for the common man. Right now, the focus in that minds may very well be, look, this is the end point. We're talking about judges and so on and so forth. But there's an entire value chain, the quality of laws that are made, and then the performance of the ministers in the temple of justice. Yaya earlier was talking about prosecution and so on and so forth. We also have to talk about the role of lawyers. So break it down and then probably take each of them and see how well they have performed in this value chain that will constitute the judicial sector, ultimately the third arm of government.
Thank you very much. The Constitution intends that the judiciary will be independent of the other arms of government. Of course, that independence has been challenged significantly. Without independence of the judiciary will not be able to serve as an effective check on the excesses of the executive and the legislative arm of government. So that tells me that we must pay attention to the independence of the judiciary. Now, that has been challenged, and that is the point Mark Jacob was talking about. If we do not ensure that the judiciary is adequately funded, if we do not ensure that the facilities that judges require to do their work are provided, if the other arms of government do not comply with decisions of courts, and you know, the courts don't have their own law enforcement agency. The courts, the judiciary, depends on the executive for enforcement of their judgments. But the greatest support that the judiciary must have must be from the public, from the media, from the public. In other words, when any organ of government attempts to interfere with the judiciary, the public must speak out. The Bar Association must speak out. The media must speak out. That is what protects the judiciary. But most importantly, the independence of the judiciary gives the judiciary the ability to perform their functions without looking at the faces, you know, of the other powerful institutions. Now, why am I talking about independence of the judiciary? The funding that should go to the judiciary comes from the executive and the legislature. We have discovered over the years that the judiciary is not adequately funded. I'll give an illustration. A court sits and has before him 40 cases listed. And in the 21st century, our judges still have to write. I mean, there was this trial on the international media yesterday. You saw a court televised. There was no need for a judge to be writing. And then when a judge does not write, he can take more cases. You know, and then there can be more accountability in the sense that there is more transparency because everybody can see what is going on. But you go to the National Assembly, I mean, they don't have to write their proceedings in longhand because everything is recorded. Even a mere sneezing is recorded. So we have reached a situation where I don't know why the elite of this country, including the leadership of the judiciary themselves, have not paid decent attention to the need for them to have minimum working tools. They don't have it. Secondly, judges' salary has remained static, some for as long as 20 years. Some high court judges who have been on the bench for 20 years have been on the same salary, as if inflation has not affected them, as if the exchange rate does not affect them. So what we are saying in effect is that given the conditions under which judges work, the delivery of justice has been very good. But there's much more room there's a very large room for improvement. More can be done. A lot of Nigerians are getting discouraged about taking their matters to court. You're talking about value chain. And why? Because of delay. And delay cannot be blamed on the judges. Delay can be blamed on the fact that the system does not provide the funding, the facilities. A judge is getting close to retirement. He's not sure of where he's going to, retire into. Accommodation, decent accommodation. And at the same time, you find a situation where the topmost, for example, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, I'm not talking about any individual Chief Justice, I'm talking about the office of the Chief Justice, is given a huge mansion worth maybe billions. One person. At the age of 70, he retires from the court into that mansion. What does he want to do with it? It doesn't make sense. Whereas all the other justices of the court are not provided for when they are going to retirement. The justices of the Court of Appeal are not provided for. The High Court judges, not to talk about the magistrates. And all the federal judges we have in Nigeria are less than, I think they are less than 1,000. Including their support staff. Maybe, let's say they are 10,000. You see, the reason why we must protect and ensure that the judiciary is strengthened is because they are not the political branch. They are the only one who can call the politicians to order. And that's the way the Constitution intends it. But if we allow this weakening of the judiciary to continue, it will affect democracy in the long run. Look at the way people have been doling money around for politics. That means there's money in the system, but the money is not in the right places. One of the places we need to pump money into for Nigeria to move in the right direction is the accountability institutions. And the foremost accountability institution is the judiciary, supported by other law enforcement agencies. So that when the politicians are doing their work, they are mindful of the fact that, somebody said and rightly put it, that the fear of the judiciary must be the beginning of wisdom in a democracy. But now, because the politicians have weakened the judiciary, not all of them. In fact, there are some politicians who are interested in making sure that the country runs well. And one of the ways they can do that is by investing more resources in the judiciary. If the judiciary is independent, many of these things we are complaining about, look at the excellent work the judiciary has done in terms of forfeiture of assets. The success of the anti-corruption agencies in recovery of assets and then convicting high-profile defendants would not have been possible without an independent judiciary. And then you talked about the need for good laws. Some of our laws are very good now, and the judiciary is applying them. The Administration of Criminal Justice Act has been an instrument, very useful instrument, in the hand of the judiciary, for ensuring that there is probity, there's accountability, there's fairness in the system. So I think, to my mind, much as we can say that the judiciary has not been given the resources, they have not been given the leeway, they have done well. But there's still a lot of room for improvement. And everyone, politicians, non-politicians, media, civil society, all of us must say, let us invest more in the accountability institutions, judiciary, law enforcement, prosecution, and all of that. If we're able to get that segment right, they're the ones that will now check the excesses of the other organs of government. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Prof. Thank you really for that insight. Dangana, let's, I don't know, the Prof has painted a very nice and elaborate picture of, how the judiciary operates in the circumstances it found itself. And I think that, a sort of, gives, or rather lay claim to his saying that the judiciary has been acquitted at the beginning of this program. And then the reasons are that judiciary is not operating outside the Nigerian society, as you earlier said, and it cannot operate as such outside because it is part of the Nigerian system. But all the same, in view of what is happening, there are still, some flip sides of this very arm of government, which seem to be bringing in some issues of problems here and there. When we look at the corruption issue we're talking about here, which you earlier alluded to, and of course when you look at the public confidence in the judiciary, and you look at the meddling of the politicians too in the judicial process and things like that, these have not been really going down well with the system at least, and of course which is supposed to be, as the Prof said, so somebody said, the fear of judiciary is the beginning of wisdom.
To start with, looking at the policy of arm twisting of judicial officers in context, in a situation whereby you are being arm twisted, the person hurting you, you are most likely to heed to whatever command he will give. We have instances where judicial officers were, for whatever reason, removed from office. Some of them went to court. They got judgment that they should be reinstated. Till this morning, some of them have not been reinstated. Looking at the policies or the principles governing the selection and appointment of judicial officers, is it truly in the hand of the judiciary? The Prof made mention of the issue of NJI and other institutions that are responsible for appointment, discipline, and promotion of. Who are the people there? The executives. In a situation whereby the legislators really want the judiciary to perform in area that affects them, we've seen the performance of the judiciary. To the extent of the legislators, to the extent of even amending the Constitution. Look at the context in which pre-election and election petition matters are being disposed of. What time? A very short time. 180 days, 60 days, 60 days. And they've delivered. Are they not judicial officers? Because the law and every other thing that is required in that aspect has been provided. Come to the criminal aspects of the prosecution and law enforcement. It is only in Nigeria, for instance, that you will go to a court, as the two previous speakers have said, you have a whole host of cases. The heads of courts, they have tried their best. At least I practice in Abuja, FCT High Court, the Federal High Court. They have tried their best in saying, look, we are going digital. You will be on record and others. But how effective are these? After a while, it will fail. Why? Because there is no funds to continue to fund it. Our judicial officers, who are their research assistants, and what is their capability and the strength? When you compare it to other countries, like in US, a Supreme Court judge will have 3-4 professors as research assistants to him. Who are the research assistants to the CJN and others? So all these are to aid the performance of the judiciary. The absence of all this in the Nigerian context, with the little they have, yet they are still performing. Mention was made with respect to issue of lawyers. The lawyers have their workshop as the courtroom. The judicial officers have the courtroom as their workshop. The staffs of the court have the courtroom as their workshop. Now, all the key players have one role or the other to perform. And in the performance of this duty, let's assess it holistically and see. As a judge, I work with what comes to me in terms of evidential value. As a lawyer, I work with what my clients give to me with a certain percentage that this will either be or will not be, and that will be the mode of a presentation. So the performance of judiciary in holistic term in this respect should be with respect to the laws, the rules of the court that the heads of court in most cases made for speedy dispensation of the cases are there. But because of the number of cases and the facilities that will give the workability of this is often absent, and as such their hands are tied. In view of this, the performance may be considered to be a little bit abysmal, but considering the reality, they are actually trying. The value chain in respect of having the impact of the judgments. As a person, I went to court. The justice system is such that in the next 2-3 years, my case cannot be determined. Some people have even died and their children inheriting their cases. Why? All because of the number of cases that have inundated the judicial officers. A friend of mine left Nigeria and is Canada now. He has become a lawyer there. And he said, the very day you go to court, in criminal matters, you have the possibility of getting judgment on that day. What will stop us from having such things in Nigeria? Our population is one thing. The meanness in terms of resources is yet another. But in a situation whereby the resources are provided in number, nothing stops us from having 150 high courts in Abuja. So that as the cases are coming, they will be dispensed. Nothing stops us from having a kind of a high standard salary for our judicial officers to induce them to work in atmosphere that is very comfortable. Court of Appeal justices, some of the state high court judges are taking more than them in terms of salary. Except you want to improve your status, you come to the Court of Appeal. But in terms of salary, some of the state high court judges are earning more than the Court of Appeal. Then if I come from the state that their salary is higher, coming to Court of Appeal, how will I be encouraged to perform? So these are some of the things that we should look into.
All right. Thank you very much, Yahaya, for the points that you have raised. We would like Mark Jacob to also weigh in on the issue of the value chain in justice delivery in the country. But in particular, I would also want us to focus on the role of lawyers in the congestion of our courts. It is one thing to say that a judge gets into a courtroom and he has to deal with 50 cases. There have been concerns about the role that lawyers play in unnecessary litigation. Mark?
Thank you very much. The truth remains that a lot of things make for the poor output you will get from our courts. And as rightly put, the conduct of lawyers is completely very sad. As a lawyer, I feel sad sometimes when I go to court and I see the things my colleagues do. If you don't have a good case, there is no need pursuing it. There is no need just playing games with clients and collecting their money. Or some even don't collect money, but they just enjoy coming to the court to play games. I have been in a matter where we had all witnesses that were possible for the prosecution. They called all their witnesses. At the point we were supposed to enter our defense, the prosecution came with an application to recall all their witnesses. The judge allowed it because he didn't want a situation where somebody would complain that he was shut out. So lawyers, both on the official side, prosecutors from the ministries of justice, EFCC and the rest, then on the private side, we are guilty of so many things. And it is unfortunate. We make the work of the judiciary less attractive, cumbersome for the judges, and unattractive to the members of the public. And it's a shame. Senior lawyers are also involved. Very senior lawyers sometimes, with due respect, come to court just to play some games. And you see, you know very well that that is what they are doing, but there is nothing the judge can do. So there is a lot to be done on the part of the lawyers to improve the justice delivery system. Now, we must also not forget that the judiciary also must purge itself. Look, the system of recruiting judges onto the bench is questionable these days. You find children of judges making the list all the time. So it is now becoming an Okonkwo and Co thing, where if you don't have somebody in the system, you don't become a judge. Or if you are not connected to government, somebody high up in government, you will not be recruited as a judge. You have people being elevated to the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. On what I hate to mention, quota system. That somebody becomes a Court of Appeal judge because of where he comes from. That there is a vacancy from his zone. And they go and shop for people who have no record of performance in their states, no record of excellence in delivery of judgments. Some of them are very lazy even in their states. They have no record of excellent performance, but they get elevated to the superior courts just out of the issue of quota system. And you cannot expect something out of nothing. Somebody who has no requisite qualification and capacity to sit in the bench, you keep elevating them because of quota system. The system we use in this country to appoint people into sensitive positions is questioning and is damaging the quality we get from those systems. And the prosecution too makes the work of the judiciary cumbersome and difficult. You go to court, you find, except for now that we have the provisions in the Administration of Criminal Justice Act that make it impossible for you to get adjournments beyond a certain number of times. But over the years, you find government agents who are supposed to come anxious to prosecute, delaying prosecution. I've been on the private side most of the time, and I know that you have attorneys generals in the states who have no business. They don't go to court. They don't prosecute. They send NYC lawyers to go and handle very serious cases. And sometimes these young people go to court and they are faced with senior lawyers from the private bar. And the only thing they can do is to seek adjournments. And so you find the whole gamut of this, the value chain is being damaged by individuals and groups. And this continues to erode the confidence the common man has on the judiciary. Just like Prof said, how can a case be lingering in court for 20 years? And you expect the citizens to be comfortable with that. People go to court because they want justice. But like everybody says, justice delayed is justice denied. We keep denying justice to the common man out of technicalities and out of the convenience of lawyers who have nothing to lose if the case is taking a long time. Now, we must also go back, like I said, to the fundamentals in our Constitution, where the corruption, yes, we will speak truth to ourselves. The truth is that money sometimes is budgeted properly for the judiciary. But people who are appointed by the executive to run the judicial arm of government find a way of dealing corruptly with these funds. We were all around when a certain registrar of one of our courts was alleged to have stolen so much money, in billions. As we see today, that person is still a staff of the Judicial Service Commission. He's in fact the head of one of those federal agencies. The issue was covered up, and he was never prosecuted. So those who come through the judiciary, through the executive arm of government to work in the judiciary, have a big role to play if we want to gain or have the judiciary perform optimally, because they are the people who handle the accounts, the fundings that come from the executive. They are the ones that know there is no court judge, there is no judge that can be corrupted without the cooperation of the staff. I know, and we have seen situations where judges have rightly been accused of corruption. But if you check very well, you find that some registrar or some clerk was the center person, dealing and dealing and dealing. So it's a whole chain. You say value chain, well, I call it the chain of inefficiency. It's built, and it is a long chain rolling around and found in every segment of our society. And like I said, yes, the judiciary is part of Nigeria, and the indices of failure or corruption that we find in other aspects of the Nigerian life are also found in the judiciary. We cannot deny that. But like I said, the process of even recruiting our judicial officers is faulty, and we must work on it if we want optimal performance. You cannot just take people because of their names or because of their place of origin and populate the superior courts with them. We will not have performance.
Thank you so much, Mark Jacob. Let's move over to Professor Richard Wokocha. Prof, you've heard, Mark Jacob speak there, and of course it's a whole gamut of value chain, if I may add, or rather if I may cut him directly, that is very inefficient. And over the 23 years of Nigeria's unbroken civil rule, the judiciary, even before then, has been on the ground and has been the last stop of the common man, if that is really true. And looking at the whole conversation circle today, Kingsley, it seems like I'm the old one out here. I'm the only person who's a lawyer, and I think I should speak for the masses right away.
You are covered. You are covered. You are protected.
It's all right, therefore. So, Richard Wokocha, I want to go through one of the, setups here we have. A member of the highest court, really, of the land, Justice Jimba Eko, who retired recently, had his, in his valedictory speech, that is, called for the anti-corruption agencies, rather, to be allowed to look at the finances of the judiciary, claiming that, considering that funding for the judiciary had improved, and it was strange that the take-home pay of judges hadn't commensurately improved. And then he argued that such investigation shouldn't be seen as an interference in the judiciary, but a necessary act to have a clear understanding of what is happening to the finances of the judiciary. What do you make out of this?
I think it makes the point that needs to be made. Yes, it's necessary that you must have adequate funding, but adequate funding will not solve the problem that called for adequate funding. If you do not have an accounting system that ensures that every penny or every kobo that is voted to the judiciary goes to perform the function for which it is voted. So I think the distinguished retired justice was making a point that needed to be made. Yes, we need to improve funding. Yes, we are not funding the judiciary enough. But as I said earlier, yes, we also need to monitor both the process of expenditure and to ensure that adequate accounting is done by those in that sector who are responsible for ensuring that funds provided perform the function they are supposed to perform, which is ease the life of a judge, enable him focus on the work he has to do without all the worries that has dogged that sector of government in the last 23 years or beyond. There is no denying the fact that there has been an improvement in funding. It may not be enough. It may not address all we need to address in terms of funding needs of the judiciary. But as the judge rightly observed, we are yet to see adequate difference made in the system by the improvement even that has come into the funding aspect of the judiciary. So accountability is one which we have to take seriously if we want to see effects from whatever improvements that are made in that sector of funding. But the judiciary is a special part of government, and we must stop thinking, if we want to make progress, we must stop thinking of the judiciary as another office of government where we can take in any and everybody to go and perform or hold office or do work. The recruitment process is designed to ensure that not just every lawyer, but the very best, both in terms of integrity, first and foremost integrity, and then learning, that is knowledge, that the very best of the legal profession is what is taken to the judiciary. There is a reason for that. It's not just that, yes, they will be able to read the law, but the judiciary is one which places a person who is appointed into it above normal level of thinking. It puts in more responsibility on you, both morally and otherwise, than anybody who holds any other office in government. Independence is guaranteed by two things. One is external, one is internal. The external one is the one we have dwelt on for so long, on funding that needs to be made, on ensuring that the judiciary has adequate materials with which to perform. But the internal one is also critical. If a judge lives above board, the government can frown at the judge. The government can try to ensure that his case does not come before the judge. But the government cannot do. That is a government that wants to do the wrong thing. But it cannot do much more than frowning. In the past, beyond the last 23 years, you found that we had judges who could speak truth to power. The internal control mechanism requires that the judge must be willing and able to deliver justice according to law, and that he must be able to put himself above even personal trappings and personal attractions that may be caused by inadequacy of funding and other such things. Yes, he's a human being and he has to do his work, but his oath is taken to ensure that he delivers justice according to the law. As some speakers in the panel have said, I am concerned about situations where judgments are based not on the law, but on some other factors. No matter how attractive those factors are, what does the greatest damage to the reputation of the judiciary in the eyes of the common man? It's not so much the delay that is occasioned by the absence of materials and the time it takes the court to deliver judgments. Yeah, that has an effect. But greater effect is created in the mind of the citizen when he sees situations where the judgment looks like everything other than justice, where the law says one thing and the outcome of a judicial process says another thing. It makes the average citizen, who in the first place does not even have enough money to go through, to pursue litigation, it makes him lose confidence completely and to resort to some other means. So yes, if we want to stop, if we want to make the judiciary more effective and we want to cut the delay in the process of litigation, I will assure you that we won't make any progress until we stop the judges from writing with long hand. It is 2022. And our judges should not be suffering what judges suffered in 1965 when I was born. So we must find a way to ensure that we upgrade the mechanism of the judicial function to that level where the judge should be able to listen. Having 50 cases on the court list is terrible. But what is even more terrible is expecting the judge to record the proceeding in all the 50 cases by long hand. It's not going to work. So even if we vote money into the judiciary from now to tomorrow, and they put even much more than what they require, if we don't improve the working facilities and we don't get them out from that process of writing by long hand, we will not achieve what we want. So on that side, we must do everything necessary and possible to ensure that the judges stop having to record court proceedings by long hand. It should be possible to record them and transcribe them electronically later for the judge to read through when he's writing his judgment or when he's evaluating the case before him, but definitely not writing by longhand. Now, on the internal one, we must find a way to get our judges to focus on the law. There will be distractions, there will be challenges arising from the fact that they are members of the society, but they must be able to deliver justice according to the law. The day a judgment does not reflect the law, everybody who is in court will be discouraged, and everybody who reads that judgment or even hears the reportage of that judgment will lose confidence. So that part is in our hand. It is influenced by the appointment process. It's been pointed out in this discussion that we need to do a lot more about improving the appointment process. What should be uppermost in our minds in appointing a person to the judiciary should be first the fact that he has integrity, he has unshaken integrity, and that he is knowledgeable. Everybody can perform the second part. Everybody can have the knowledge. But integrity is what distinguishes the function of the judicial officer from that of every other sector of government. If we toy with it, things will get worse. So yes, we need to vote more money, but more important than the voting of the money is ensuring that the money performs the function for which it is voted to the judiciary. If we do that, you will definitely see improvement in terms of what trickles down to the average judge at the end of the day from the vote that is made from the center. As has been pointed out, a man should be sure of what he has to eat tomorrow. He should be sure of what he will use and what he will need to do the average work that a citizen who lives in Nigeria should do. The judges have children. The children have to go to schools, and they have to go to good schools as well. Yes, they may not have to go to schools where they are paying dollars, but they should be sufficiently paid. If you investigate, you will find that the Chief Judge of the United States of America earns more than the President of the United States of America. There is a reason for it. The President can do some other things, he can find funds in some other ways, but the judge is expected to sit back and focus on creating equilibrium in society, focus on creating harmony in society, and reconciling conflicting interests that are in society. If he has to do this, he needs to have the peace of mind with which to function. So we need to do a lot more in that direction. But as our people say, very often, lizards come visiting only because we have brought faggot-infested woods to the house. Some of the things we have frowned against have been things arising from conducts that are not usually associated with the judiciary. We need to do a lot more to get that sector back to the level of integrity that it used to have. That alone will convince a citizen to have faith in the process much more than the fact that the case is going to take him more years, which in any case is bad enough. But we need to do something about that internal part of independence of the judiciary, which enables the judge speak the truth no matter the circumstance, and which enables him do what he has to do without being influenced by any other thing, both personal hardship and factors that are coming from the fact that he lacks materials with which to work. That for me is more important than what the external part does to the process.
All right, Professor Wokocha, thank you very much there for the exposition, and indeed the other guests for the very valid contributions you've made to the conversation so far. We took a short break now. When we return, we take a much deeper dive into some of the other aspects. You're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. All our 4 guests are still with us for the conversation, 2 here in Abuja, 1 guest in Port Harcourt, and another guest at our Just Network Center. Now, Professor Akinshaye George with us here in the Abuja studios. You guys have talked about the need to look into the appointment and promotion of judicial officers. And earlier you talked about the accountability institutions, that the political institutions ought ordinarily to dread the judiciary, because at the end of the day, the judiciary will, of course, oversight them on the basis of its constitutional enablement. But there have been instances, and these have been pointed out, about now the bench or if you like, persons who are seeking appointment to the bench go to the same political establishment to curry favors to be appointed. Or otherwise, political considerations come into the appointment of judicial officers. What would be the ideal situation?
The Constitution provides for what we call collaboration in regard to the appointment of judicial officers. Collaboration between amongst the organs of government. The executive is involved. The legislature is also involved. But there must be clear standards to govern this collaboration. There must be clear standards to govern this collaboration. A good standard, for example, would be that there must be no lobbying for judicial appointment. And we have practiced this before. In the previous republic, I think in the First Republic, applicants, there was no opportunity for people to apply to become judges. You don't apply to be a judge, not to talk about lobbying to be a judge. But you are recommended to the authorities. Judges observe lawyers who come to practice before them, and they make recommendation to the Judicial Service Commission that, the heads of, they make recommendations to the head of court. The head of court forwards to the Judicial Service Commission based on merit. A situation where there are vacancies in the judiciary, and politicians will start running around to fill up those vacancies. I think it's most unfortunate. Most unfortunate. We may have quota system. I do not agree that appointment of judges should only be based on merit. A country, Nigeria, must make sure that there is balancing, that our judges are reflective of our federal character. But choose the best from every location. Mm-hmm. Look for the best from everywhere. And there are good people all over this country. No section has a monopoly of people of integrity, people of knowledge. In the legal profession, it's a profession that has people from all over the country. And we all meet at the law school. Mm-hmm. So we know ourselves. But all of a sudden, you find a situation where politicians now dominate the process of appointment of judges at the state level and at the federal level. I think that should not be. That should not be. I do not see reasons why even children of judges cannot be appointed judges. Why not? What is important is, have you met the qualification? Have you met the requirement? Is the process transparent? Let the names of everybody applying for judicial office be made public. Let the public participate. Let there be open debate. Let them be subjected to real debate, including examination. Because now we worry, sometimes we are going to court, you are not even sure that the judge you are going to appear understands the argument you are trying to pass. Nothing can weaken a legal system much more than appearing before a judge who does not even understand what you are saying. And then again, much as we are complaining that the working conditions of judges are not good, yet we continue to have this high influx of applicants who want to join the bench. Then there's a problem, because although people know that the salary is poor, they are aware that the office of judge is an influential position and that you can sell that office one way or the other. In order to allow room for other participants, this is my conclusion.
Okay.
Strengthen the judiciary, including the appointment process, their working conditions. Let there be accountability, even within the judiciary itself. The funds that are allocated to the judiciary, how are we utilizing it? After we have dealt with that, then we must ensure that judges' working conditions are improved, their pay is improved, and then they themselves are subjected to accountability. And then they will be in a position to ensure that they check the excesses of the other arms of government. That's my approach.
Okay, thank you really, Prof. Akinshe. really a sustainable, sustained democracy, I must say. There must be that strong and reliable, judiciary, as you are pointing out, and that judiciary has to be made up of people of integrity, as being put forward by Wokocha and the other guest from Jos. Dangana, the integrity issue here is very, very important. Merit is the issue, integrity is the issue, and of course people have to be, who they are. Let them worth their onions, as the saying goes, before they become whatever they should be. Intervention by politicians and influential people in the society should be jettisoned as much as possible in order to see to it that this is achieved. Do you see this really, is it really achievable in the context of the Nigerian setting, given how we are and the way we are so mixed up and the kind of negatives that come along with our lives, especially corruption, politics, ethnicity, and the rest of them?
Yes, it's achievable. I just cite an instance of what the legislators or the politicians, what as to the dispensation or determination of their cases, they worked towards that, and within the minimal period now, the election petitions and pre-election cases have been determined. In terms of appointment of judicial officers, one key factor which I consider as fundamental is the willingness and the desire to do the job. The people that are being appointed on daily basis, are they willing? Do they have that resolute mind to say, we really want to practice this work of a judicial officer? Despite the hardship, have they condemned themselves? Because there are a lot of people in terms of practitioners and what you choose to do for yourself. It's more of a condemnation. Yes, this job is not a well-paid job, but let me do it to make my contribution to the society. Like our teachers, our lecturers, and others. Now, in appointments, why will somebody who applied will still go and lobby if you know certainly that, yes, you are qualified and you are willing to do the job? Why will my senator or my member, House of Representatives, be involved in the process of appointing me as a judge? Why? Because the NJC, NJI, and other aspects of that contribute towards this appointment are all under the executive. And this urge of saying, I'm instrumental to the appointment of this, as a legislator, I fought for this appointment to my own zone. If you must fight for it to your own zone, must it be anybody? So, one, what are the guidelines? What is wrong with the old method of recommendation? If I have a chief judge in my states, there are other judges from other local governments that are judicial officers in the states. Possibly lawyers from different local governments across the states would have one case or the other before all these judges. And your behavior as a lawyer is subject to being watched by these judicial officers. The way we sat in the comfort of our offices to gossip about judges, they also sit somewhere to gossip about lawyers.
No, to talk about lawyers.
No, to gossip, when to talk about lawyers,
yes.
the conduct, the activities, the language that a lawyer used before the court, all this will be a subject of discussion. Whether it is aimed towards making the lawyer. Some will correct you there and then. So if all these things are taken into consideration to say, we no longer will call for this application. Once there are slots, recommendation should come from the judicial officers, or recommendation should come from the security officers. The people being appointed were subjected to background checks by the security agents. But if these background checks are really, truly checks, why is it that some still go there with some conducts? Or is it that the check is not the real check in the real sense of being checked.
Not thorough enough.
Thorough enough to discover a lot of things.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Let's quickly mind the views of the other two guests before we call it today on this conversation segment. Mark Jacob, in our Kaduna Network studios, in our Jos Network studio. Well, of course, we are former Attorney General of Kaduna State, so you can pardon the transposition. You raised the structural issues that pose an impediment to the efficiency of the judiciary, and those structural issues relate to the location of judicial institutions under the executive branch, and that these institutions ordinarily get compromised and therefore do not become an aid to the independence of the judiciary. But we have seen one step in terms of constitutional amendment, because the argument would then be that these structural issues would require constitutional amendment. In the effort to get a fifth alteration, we have seen the separation of the office of the Attorney General from that of Commissioner for Justice or Minister for Justice. There have been complaints, for instance, at the state level that Attorney Generals are not as independent as they ordinarily should be, as provided for in the Constitution. Is there any likely salutary effect from this attempt at amending the Constitution, assuming it says through 24 state houses of assembly?
The biggest challenge is actually internal. The hate of our courts, either at the state level or at the several stratas in the federal structure. You see, a federal high court, for instance, in Abuja, where I have cases, you will find out that the judge doesn't even come to sit till 11. And by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, he tells you he's going. And it has been going on for years. Nobody calls anybody to caution. I have another matter in Kaduna. You have a judge that sits maybe twice in a week or thrice. The head of the court has not called that judge to order. And we are condoned it, where we can't do anything about it. So, like I said, it's internal, because the system makes it impossible to checkmate who even comes in. And so, you can't even draw or issue a yellow card to anybody because he came in through this process, through one name or through one big person, or he's representing a certain interest. So if you attempt to caution him, that interest may call you to order too. Now, what I'm saying is that the constitutional amendment and all other things that need to be corrected, like the prof from Port Harcourt said, until we do the basics, why is it that the heads of our courts, starting from the CJN within these 20-something years, why is it that they have retained this ugly process of long handwriting? A judge comes to court. There is a witness that does not understand English. He brings an interpreter. The interpreter will interpret what is being said to the witness. He's heard it in English. He now has to hear it again in Hausa or Yoruba. Then the interpreter now interprets back to the judge what the witness has said. And then the judge writes in longhand. For God's sake, how can such a judge comprehend what he is doing in different cases, maybe 10 cases, and he has to go through the same process in a day, sitting without air conditioning? Maybe the chair is even broken and he is managing not to fall off. I'm saying that these are the realities we have in the system, and we have refused to change them. We have refused to advocate for them, because it's either we are comfortable with what it is, or because we hide under the format of not being activists. We wait, the judges, the heads of the courts, wait for someone else to advocate for them. But you have access to the governors, you have access to the presidents. You don't raise these issues, and you know there are impediments to your performance, and they keep eroding your standing in society. And we have situations where judicial officers go cap in hand to lobby for things to be done for the judiciary with the executive. It ought not be so. It ought not to be that the judiciary will be going cap in hand to beg governors for cars, for housing, for welfare, for salary gifts, for Christmas gifts. These things are happening. Now, someone mentioned that persons should be willing and available to do the job. But I say people should have capacity to do the job before they get appointed. There must be capacity. And you have defined it well. There must be there must be proper change.
We thank you so much for that insight. We've been pressed for time, really. We've got to really cut it quick here. But we really have to take maybe for 30 seconds, Professor Richard Wokocha, to give us your closing remark on this issue. 23 years of, judiciary, 23 years of unbroken democracy, that is the role of the judiciary. In 30 seconds, please, what would you tell Nigerians?
There is greater room for improvement ahead of us than we have done already. And I think we should look at the institutions that appoint and discipline judges and regulate the judiciary. The essence of bringing in people from different sectors is to ensure variety and ensure adequacy in the process. And I think that is defeated when they all have to be appointed, selected by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, no matter how good he is. The Nigerian Bar Association should produce those who are coming from the bar. And any other sector that is to bring people, the Committee of Judges should produce the judges that shall serve, and not the Chief Justice of Nigeria appointing or picking 5 justices and picking 5 senior or 10 senior lawyers and picking junior lawyers. No. To ensure that we get the result behind the variety we have created, we should ensure that those sectors bring in their very best to do that job. I think with that, there is hope and there is room for improvement. I believe that we will make more progress when we make necessary changes as have been observed in this discussion.
Right, Richard Wokocha, Professor of Constitutional Law and Jurisprudence, joining us from our Port Harcourt Network Center. I would like to appreciate you for your contributions to our discussion this morning. From Jos, we were joined by Mark Jacob, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Kaduna State. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Here in the studios, Yahaya Dangana, a legal practitioner. Thank you for being our guests on Good Morning Nigeria. Last but not the least, Professor Akinseye George, Learned Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor of Public Law and President, Center for Social Legal Studies. Prof, great having you again on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, so that's been it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Deep thanks for tuning in. Join us again tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Yusuf Nadabusman. Do have a great day, please. Thank you.